right, welcome back to Mass Money. I'm Kirby, that's Alex. Today we're talking about the similarities to the US economy compared to the Colombian economy. As you all know, that Alex just came back from Colombia. He got the Colombian crud or whatever he got going on over there. He's coughing, barking, and all that other crazy stuff. But with that being said, Alex, run away with it. Let us know what's the difference and what's the similarities that we have between our two countries.
Yeah, so it was kind of funny seeing how over there, I mean, you see different companies, different brands, but the way it operates is very similar to like the US. Even the apartment that we were staying in with my wife's brother, um, he well actually the families kind of live very close, like I think half of them live in the same apartment complex. Um, but I asked my father-in-law I asked if the government builds the apartment complexes, and he said no, it's private investors, which is kind of the same thing you'd see over here in apartment complexes. It's private investors that build up different complexes and rent out the apartments. Um, Over there, there's certain companies that are the same to what you might see here. There's a company called Macro over there, which is very similar to like Costco or Sam's Club. There's a place called, oddly enough, it's called Home Center, which is like English. It's called Home Center, but it's just like Lowe's or Home Depot. So there's a lot, even like going into the mall, you see like the stores rented out on the sides, and then in the aisle, you have like different little booths that are set up for like ice cream or like fast food, stuff like that. So very similar to how everything was structured and operated. One thing that was very different was the police over there are actually treated at a higher standard, and they're more strict than the military. That was something that was very different to me. But yeah, everything did operate very similar to the US. I don't know if you have any experience like that in other countries that are third world countries.
Yeah, and it's just like again, different strokes, different folks. Like, I mean, as some people know, I went out and trained police and military in different countries and things like that. But it's crazy to see that, and like you said, in Colombia, it's people they try to mimic the United States because they want to become that economic power that the United States is. And that's I mean, as you see across all fronts, that's how it is. The individual, I mean, the private investors that come build, real estate properties and things like that. Governments, no matter really what country you're in, governments don't come in and build anything. It's usually private investors looking to make the extra dollar, just like the United States. But the difference between the United States and other countries is the investors have more control over the assets than the government. I mean, just if we go to oil, for instance, in the United States, all the oil is controlled by private investors or companies, but still private investors. But when you start going to places like Venezuela, the OPEC Plus, they're controlled by the government. Housing. I mean, I remember we talking about Venezuela, how the housing, the government owns all the housing. Well, they're the overshadow government of the housing, where if you can't afford it, then the government takes it, and then the government can charge you taxes and stuff like that and take your house, and you don't ever really own your house outright. And it sounds bad when you say it like that for a place like Venezuela, but in the United States it's the same way. If you don't pay your property taxes, the government's going to take your house. No matter if you own it outright or not, they're still going to take it, and they're going to sell it to a private investor to take over it, and then you got to pay the private investor back the taxes that they took if they do a tax lien on your house or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not that far off from the US government economy. It's just they don't, in the US, we don't talk about other countries and how they operate most things. The biggest discrepancy I see is the oil companies or private or public companies or businesses, how they get ran in the United States versus a foreign entity or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And just being in Colombia, I didn't know if, how things worked in other countries, if the government, owned more than others, but um, come to find out it's basically the same way as over here. One thing that was actually very surprising to me that was a very obvious American adaptation was they were celebrating Halloween over there. Like
Right,
actual Halloween, not like, some of like I know in Mexico they celebrate, I think, the Day of the Dead, but this was actually Halloween. And it was interesting because I mean, especially just growing up in a Puerto Rican family and knowing my wife's family, like Halloween or holidays like that are very like taboo in Spanish culture because it's like deemed like satanic or whatever. Um, so to see that like that actually got adapted and it was like quite it was seen in like the mall and the apartment complex, like office, like at the schools and all that, like they all were celebrating it, which is interesting because holidays in general are just used for to as marketing, basically to make money. And same thing as over here. So to see that, to think that maybe someone got the idea over here, went back to Colombia and like started this whole theme over there, like it's very interesting to see like how, like you said, countries try to mimic the American society or economy. Even people, the way they were dressed was very Western or American with the clothing that they had. Um, the way kids were acting over there was very, very similar to America. That was
right, right.
very noticeable. But with all that being said, guys, if you like the video or if you have any input to make, let us know down below. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.